There is a supernatural world that surrounds us, and sometimes it manifests to people like you and me. You'll hear some of these stories and so much more right here on Supernatural Confrontations. We're going to be talking today about a shroud encounter, not with the actual cloth, but this woman whose name is Anne. She had contact with hundreds and hundreds of original pictures taken from the STURP team, Shroud of Turin Research Project team. I believe that went over in 1978. We covered some of this in Watchers, but I think you'll find this interesting, and I'll weigh into that and so much more after a word from our sponsor, BioTrust. Hey folks, check this out. Studies show our appearance directly affects our mental health. Many anti-aging supplements found on store shelves try to capitalize on that. Most of them fall short. This is because they fail at targeting the root of the problem. The newest trend in anti-aging supplements is collagen. Research shows a good collagen supplement can help make hair stronger and the skin more youthful while supporting healthy joints, bone, and gut health. But don't run to the store and buy the first collagen supplement you see. Grab Ageless Multi-Collagen, which can only be purchased online. Ageless Multi-Collagen's ingredients are held to the highest quality standards in the collagen industry. It is some of the purest quality collagen you can get. Folks, I take it every single day. I have unlocked a deal for my audience right here, not only on PPS Report, but across all of our platforms. Get up to 51% off if they order by going to, just check this out, healthwithla.com, healthwithla.com. Click the link below, healthwithla.com. Okay, Hope in the Heartland. We are the plan. 2 nights. I'll be speaking both evenings. I've got a really good time slot right after dinner, so I can always watch people nod out. But it's June 10th and 11th. It's in Kansas. Hope in the Heartland. Google it. Hope to see you there. They've got about 200 people signed up. They're expecting the crowds to swell a little bit. We'll see what happens. So I'm anxious and looking forward to meeting the folks in the Heartland, and it'll be great. It's very informal. It's in a tent. Jeans, boots, t-shirts, that type of thing. There's a chuck wagon that's going to be happening. It's going to be great. It's going to be really a wonderful time in the Lord. I'll be speaking again 2 nights, once on the whole burgeoning UFO phenomena, the other night, of course, on how we got to where we are now. And unless something changes, we will lose the country, in my opinion. But I digress. So as I said, we're going to be talking about the man on the shroud, the crucified man on the shroud. Now, some of you immediately get your hackles up, and I understand that. Oh, it's a Catholic relic. It's not a Catholic relic at all. This is the original picture. I'm going to zoom in like crazy here. Give me a second. Okay, so that's what the shroud looks like if you just take a photograph of it. Okay, if you were just to take a photograph of the shroud, this is what it would look like with a digital camera. You see the faint image of a man on a shroud. Well, Secundo Pia did this basically, and I want to thank Barry Schwartz, because this is his work. When Secundo Pia developed his film, this is what he saw. Remember, he had glass plates. So this begs the question, if it's a forgery, how would someone know about the about glass plates and negatives and positive images? So in other words, when you have a glass plate and you take a photograph, let's say in the early part of the 20th century is when Secundo Pia was there, and he's developing the plates in his darkroom. And basically the first picture he developed, I'll just move it back to this, was the face on the shroud. And he almost dropped the plate, because what came up was a positive image. So right off the bat, we've got something, in my opinion, that's utterly supernatural, because that shouldn't be there. We also see, and I'm going to zoom in here even further, look at the body. Look at the scourge marks. Absolutely unbelievable. Notice that the nail prints are not in the palm of the hands as depicted in medieval art, but it's through the lower part of the hand into the wrists, and it comes out the back end where the bones meet. And the scourging was incredibly brutal, absolutely brutal. So let's back this up. So am I saying that this is something we should worship? Let's start there, because I know we get a lot of blowback from people. Oh, well, you're worshiping a Catholic relic. First of all, it's not a Catholic relic. It is a piece of forensic evidence, in my opinion, of the greatest event in all of history. That is the resurrection of Jesus in that tomb. The image on the shroud is the shroud itself is about 13 feet long, 3.5 feet wide. It bears the frontal and dorsal images of a crucified man who has been scourged brutally. He also has a wound in his side. Let me just show you that again. You can see that right here, right there. There's the wound in the side. The helmet of thorns over his head. And it's amazing how people will just immediately jump to conclusions that it's this, that, or the other thing. Spend an hour or two on shroud.com before you write me, please. Spend an hour or two. First of all, we don't worship the shroud, but I call it God's calling card because it's forensic evidence of the greatest event in history. So let's get this straight. The body is in the tomb. So what do you think happens in that tomb to resurrect that body? Nothing happens? He just pops up? No. According to Dame Isabel Pixek, it was a singularity. It was a singularity event. In other words, time and space as we know it stopped. The body levitated. This is conjecture, but the body levitated. The shroud was pulled completely taut, and then the body completely evaporated, disintegrated, transformed in perhaps trillions of light particles. And that's what produced the image on the shroud. Like the transfiguration. See, this is the problem. We have these truncated views of the supernatural. Well, we get an idea of some of what that's like in the transfiguration, don't we? So Jesus is transfigured in front of his disciples. How does that work? We just take it for granted. How does that work? Obviously, something very supernatural is going on there. Well, the greatest event in all of human history, the resurrection of our Lord and Savior Jesus, the Messiah. I mean, don't you think something incredibly supernatural happened in that tomb? That's conjecture, but Dame Isabel Pixek, who she passed away several years ago. We interviewed her in our Watchers series, which was just incredible. We wound up in her studio when we were filming there, and Richard was crying. I was laughing with glee. I was just completely blown away by this woman. She's a world-class muralist, and she's also a particle physicist. So she's got both sides of the brain working overtime. And it was Dame Isabel who came up with the idea, the theory, which is conjecture on her part, that the body was levitated, there was a singularity event, the shroud was pulled taut, and that image is the body. Groping for the word here. Evaporated is really not what happened. Transfigured into his glorified body, as it were. Right? It's absolutely amazing what happened in the shroud. So Anne emailed me a while back with this story. And I'm going to let her tell it because she does it much better than I do because it happened to her, not me. Are we worshiping the shroud? Once again, we're not. Are we saying that something miraculous happened because of the shroud? Yes and no. And I'll weigh into that on the other side. Folks, I'm here with Anne. She has a very interesting story to tell. And I'll, of course, let her tell it without getting in the way as much as possible. But there is a supernatural world that is all around us, and sometimes it manifests. And it manifested for Anne in a way that's sort of a very personal way. And Anne, you had what we can only call a supernatural confrontation, and you were working with an object. And I'm not going to tell the folks what that object was. I'll let you tell the story. Please, go ahead.
All right. About 10 years ago, I was living in the Piedmont area of North Carolina. I had taken care of my mom in late stages of Alzheimer's for about 6-7 years. And I had gone into adrenal burnout. This was in my home. I was by myself. This was 24/7. And my health became so bad and my exhaustion became so bad that my sister in Virginia came and got our mom and took her to Virginia with her. So I had to begin a road of recovery to gain back my strength. And so I asked around, and I was looking for a in-depth Bible study group. And someone told me about this group in Cary, North Carolina. That's just outside of Raleigh, North Carolina. And they gave me directions. It's in the back of this restaurant and so on. So I had to travel about an hour to get there, and I found them. Okay. And a very laid back group, but an astonishing group. And at the time, and they always used the computer. At the time, I was not, didn't know how to work my laptop very good. So I sat next to George. George knew all about laptops, and he helped me with it. Only found out later, George was the best man for Joel Richardson at his wedding, and his roommate. The Mahalas were there. Really? Yes. I mean, this, when somebody said it was an in-depth Bible study group, this was in depth. These, the wives were there too. So these were very, very devout Christians, not just on the surface level, but the kind that have a relationship with the Lord, and I mean they're into things deeply. So Tom and Donna Muhala was there, and so
let me stop you there. Let me stop you there because our audience might not know. Who are these folks, and why should we remember their names?
Okay. In the late 70s, I think somewhere around 1978, Tom organized the STURP team, the Shroud of Turin team. He had a master's degree in chemistry. It was like a double master's in chemistry and physics or something. He's way up there as far as being an intellectual. And he organized the STURP team and all the people in it, and made all the arrangements and all that kind of thing. And at that time, I think he was living in Connecticut area, okay. But they had since moved to Raleigh, North Carolina. And so there's about 3 or 4 of us at church or after this fellowship service. And he's saying, well, and he was given names, and like you mentioned, Barry Schwartz.
Barry Schwartz, yes.
I had no idea who these people were. Okay, really, I had no idea. I had been isolated with my mom for about 7 years. Okay, and he says, well, the photographer has passed away, and I have all of this film, and I am afraid it will deteriorate over time. And he says, what I want to do is convert it from film to
a digital
hard drive.
Yeah, digital.
Yeah, to a digital format in a hard drive, so that it could be all saved. And he says, but I need volunteers. And I'm going, yes, I'll volunteer. I'll help you. And a lot of the work involved is people don't realize that there were hundreds of pictures.
Yep.
Okay. And being the scientists that they were, okay, they divided the shroud into grids, large, small, itty bitty, tiny, incy wincy. Okay, all the way to the where you see the pictures of the entire shroud, and everything in between. Now every single little piece, yes, every single little piece of film, yeah, even something like what you have was on a little tiny piece of film, and and each one separately was in a protective sleeve. And then these were in these long boxes and they were filed. Okay, each tiny piece of film was cataloged with letters and numbers so that you could identify each one and you'd know exactly where it was taken on the shroud.
Okay.
So there were several other women. Yeah, I got to work on the shroud because I wasn't a good typist. It's like, yes, okay, but evidently I had a steady hand because I was wearing these old-fashioned white gloves like the ladies used to wear at the
Yep.
weddings.
The museum gloves. I've worn them when handling artifacts, when handling
Yes.
pictures, to keep your oil off that. Yes. Exactly.
Yes. Okay, and there were two rooms, one where they were doing all the typing in the catalog, and the other room where Dr. Lavoy was. Okay, now this, and I sent you a picture of the Dr. Lavoy, and maybe even you could put a link to some of his sites. He has written a book called I think it was the mystery of the shroud. And see, I never met him. I never knew anything about all that. But anyway, they introduced me to him, and I find out, okay, he's from Boston, and he is a retired heart surgeon, is what they told me. Now, he described what he did in the other video I sent you is a little bit different, but they told me he was a retired heart surgeon. And evidently he done really well. Now, he had enough money that he purchased a microscopic camera. I can't even do it in the hit. This thing was about 2 to 3 feet high. Okay, and sitting on a table. And he was sitting next to me in with the computer part. And then I would remove each little tiny piece of film, and I had to get it centered up under the lens. Okay, and then, okay, when it was all set, he'd click something, it would take the picture of the film and would put it on the computer. And then, now we didn't change anything, but if you've ever worked with computer photography and everything, you can increase the light, decrease the light, do a little something here with the focus or something like that to make the picture clearer. And that's what we would do. Okay, and then when it was to our satisfaction, he would click save, and then it was sent to 2 boxes about this size up under the table that they told me were the hard drives that saved everything. And I guess it's from what was saved to those hard drives that is now available online to different scientists and that who want to look at these pictures. Now, back to, okay, there were hundreds of pictures. Now, there's several things that came out of this. One was we literally could see the blood cells of Jesus. Okay, it'd be like the entire computer screen was filled with that was a microscopic picture of the blood cell as large as the computer screen. There's no way that was paint. Okay, now at those times, and the blood cells were red. They're still red at that time before they vacuumed it and all that kind of stuff.
Where they vacuum it, and that's a whole other discussion. We actually covered some of that in our Watcher series when it was done. It was it was so deliberate because they've ruined all the forensic evidence that was on the Shroud of Turin by vacuuming it. Oh, sorry.
But we have the pictures. I mean, Tom and Donna. Tom was hugely devout Christian. And Dr. Lavoy too. It had to be the Holy Spirit that gave him the abilities, the scientific abilities and the knowledge, but also get this done. Get your team organized, go over there, get all the permission. And it was very, very difficult.
I'm aware of that. Yes.
To get in to see the shroud. Very difficult. But the Holy Spirit made a way. And that's what it's like. They vacuumed it. Those people, they vacuumed it and they thought they were destroying the evidence. But we got it.
We have it on the photographs, correct?
We got it on the photographs, and it's saved, and now it's multiple. I mean, ours was 2 down there, but then it's been saved and saved and saved. We have the evidence.
Let me stop you right there because we could go down the whole Shroud of Turin and talk about that for hours and hours and hours. But while you were doing this, and you remember, you're looking at pictures like this. And also pictures like this, which are just, that's, and these are not reproductions. These are the original photographs. And just for the quick little backstory, the shroud, what you see here, remained a mystery. In other words, when you stare at the shroud, this is what you see. You see this faint image of a man on a cloth, just like this. But, you have no idea what it is. When Secundo Pia took the first picture of the shroud, it was of the face. And when he's developing the glass plate of the face, this is what shows up, which is a positive. It's not a negative image anymore. He almost drops the glass plate. So that's why when you look at this, which is the photographic negative, essentially, which is why it's not a forgery. This, in my opinion, shows the greatest event in all of history. And there it is, the man on the shroud, the crucified man. That is exactly what the biblical narrative said. So I've established that. And for those of you who are really interested in the shroud, please go to shroud.com. That's Barry Schwartz's site, shroud.com. It was Barry who was the STURP, Shroud of Turin Research Project team photographer. He took thousands of photographs. Some of those, obviously, is what Ann handled. But Ann, what I want to get into is the supernatural confrontation that you had in this whole process, which was not just a few hours. This thing went on for days.
Day after day after day.
And something happened to you emotionally, spiritually. Tell us about that.
All right. Okay, you mentioned like Dr. Lavoy, like there was the pictures of the heart. And he's explaining about the blood flow. He's explaining uh, the different, everything about it. Also, it's like seeing the blood cells. Seeing the blood cells. This is not paint. This is blood cells. That room is darkened, and this is day after day after day. We were. You could feel the presence of the Lord. It's like it encompassed us. It surrounded us.
Wow.
It filled us. At times, looking at some of the pictures, and he was trying to explain to me the significance of what we were looking at. There would be tears in both of our eyes. I meant we were overcome with emotion. We were filled with emotion. It was such a privilege to be there, to be in the presence, in this presence. And it's like the blood lives. Jesus lives. We were looking at how he was resurrected, but we were it's like I felt like Mary Magdalene. When she went to the tomb and she saw that he had been resurrected, and he said, Mary. Well, I felt like he was saying, Annie. I live. And despite I had been in an emotionally abusive marriage, I had gone into exhaustion taking care of my mom. I was alone, nobody to help me. But it was like I was healed. It was like the Lord was giving me such a privilege to see how he was resurrected. And Dr. Lavoy, and I meant the face on Dr. Lavoy too. He was overcome with emotion. You could just feel the presence of the Lord. Now, I also came away with this message for people that want to say it's a fake or we were worshiping, and it's like, no, it's like Jesus lives. Jesus lives.
Yeah, you're not worshiping. I want to make something really clear. You're not worshiping the shroud. You're not bowing down. You're looking at the shroud like I do, as forensic evidence of the greatest event in all of history, the resurrection of our Lord Jesus. And that's what the shroud is. I'll show it again. It's photographic evidence of there he is. And, something happened to that shroud that put that imprint on that piece of cloth. There's the face. And before, I know some of you are going to instantly write in and, he's got a beard and it was like, blah, blah, blah. And he had long hair. And go to shroud.com before you come to me. Go to shroud.com and spend a few hours there because you need to, because you don't know what you don't know. And like Ann, hundreds of hours spent. I mean, some of these people have spent decades of their lives, because it is, in my opinion, forensic evidence of the greatest event in all of history, which is why it's been tried to be destroyed by the enemy numerous times. It's tried to be destroyed. We don't worship it, make that really clear, but we look at it for what it is, forensic evidence, and I won't belabor the point. Annie, I'll give you the last word. I like to keep these interviews short. We could go on for hours. You and I both know that. Okay. Wrap it up. Put it on.
Okay, one thing that I want to mention too that's microscopic, that also what we saw as big as the entire computer screen,
Okay.
was the fibers in the cloth. Okay. On the top of the fiber, you could see the blood. Okay. But at the bottom of the fiber, you could see the light coming up through it. And this is unmistakable.
Wow.
What's the Pilsnick lady's name? Anyway, she said it had to.
Dr. Isabel Pixick. Right.
Yes. Okay. She explains that for this to have happened in this way, it had to be like creation. The light coming up through it. Okay, and she has an explanation for people that can understand physics of how this happened. And what I guess my message is, I would like for those people that can explain the physics to put everything together for scientists who can understand that thing, but they're the doubters, see, that it can explain that physics that created it, because that physics proves that Jesus is God, that he is the light. I mean, it's not just a metaphor. He is the light, and all of that was created with light.
And Dame Isabel Pixick talked about a singularity, an event,
yes,
where the body is levitated in the tomb, the shroud remains taut like this, the body's in between, and then the body basically, is transformed in a gazillion points of light, which leaves
yes,
them the impression on the shroud. And you remember, this is what it looks like. It's a photographic negative. So how did they know about photography in the year 1500? It's not a hoax. It's the real deal. And the scourging is, in my opinion, so severe. There's no way back from this. Once he was scourged like that, there's no way back. And when they took him and nailed him to the cross, I mean, it's so barbaric, it's so horrific. I still have trouble understanding why. But Ann, I want to thank you so much for coming on Supernatural Confrontation, because, I just want to reiterate what happened to you in your work with Dr. Lavoy, and of course working on the shroud and the photographs. You were healed emotionally, and that's
well, and physically too, because I was I'd gone into adrenal burnout. And anyway, it's like I came out of everything. And it's like, okay, look at my picture now. I'm 73. I'm doing pretty good.
Yeah, you're doing great.
But that was the Lord healed me. He brought me back in a lot of ways, emotionally, physically, in a lot of ways.
Well, he's good, and he's good all the time. Thank you so much for coming on the record. We really appreciate it. God bless you, Ann.
All right. Thank you.
So we have a woman who is burdened down with bitterness, a troubled soul, to say the least, really. And she volunteers to help sort the pictures. Well, they've got all these pictures from the Shroud of Turin Research Project, the original photographs by Barry Schwartz. Thousands of pictures, because Barry was up at I think they had 120 hours to examine the shroud, or 126 hours, something like that. Barry Schwartz was up for like 115 of them, straight through, because it was a chance of a lifetime. And Barry knew it. We also interviewed Barry, the Right Honorable Barry Schwartz. He was knighted in I think in Spain or in Portugal, I forget which, for his work on the Shroud of Turin. Once again, it's not a Catholic relic. In my opinion, I call it God's calling card. It's forensic evidence of the greatest event in all of history, the resurrection of Jesus. So back to the woman, Anne, and she's there, and she's burdened down, she's troubled, she's carrying around all this bitterness within her, and as she begins to look at the pictures, because they're digitizing them, she's taking them out of the plastic envelopes she's got the white gloves on, putting them on the tray, they slide it in, they take a digital photograph. As they're doing this together, something happens. something happens. And that's a supernatural confrontation. She had an experience with the risen Lord. She's not worshiping the photographs. She's not worshiping the shroud. She's worshiping the one who produced the image on the shroud. And of course, that's Jesus the Messiah. Folks, if you've had a supernatural confrontation, please shoot us an email, supernatural@lamarzulli.net, supernatural@lamarzulli.net. We've got a backlog of cases. We are working on them. In fact, this afternoon, I will be emailing some of the ones that have emailed me already. We've got their emails. We've read their stories. Now I'm going to email them back and try to set up a Zoom time over the weekend with them. So next week, hopefully, we'll see you in Kansas. Thanks so much for watching Supernatural Confrontations. Remember this, there is a supernatural world that surrounds us, and sometimes it manifests to people like you and me. Thanks so much for watching.